Hi guys, welcome to 2-4 video notes. Let's go ahead and get started. So we're shipping out as the title of our actual assignment. We're going to be solving and graphing compound inequalities. So remember, inequalities are your equations that instead of an equal sign, they have less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, or greater than. Tanisha's family has signed up for a new cell phone plan. Tanisha now has a limit on the number of texts she can send or receive each month. She can text no more than 300 times per month. So that means she can text 300 times, but she cannot go over it. So her text messages need to be less than or equal to 300. So we're going to be thinking about this sign right here. The or equal to is because she can text 300. The less than is because she can text no more. So let's go ahead and answer the first question. What is the least number of texts she can make in a month? So what is the smallest amount she can make in a month? Well, that's easy. That's 0. She can actually send no texts whatsoever. Write an inequality to represent that statement. Use n for the number of texts. So her inequality would be, if that's the least amount she can actually text, our inequality would be n is greater than or equal to 0. Because this is the least amount, which is why it's the or equal to, and she can obviously text more than 0 times a month, which is why we're doing the greater than sign. What is the greatest number of texts she can make in a month? Well, the greatest number is 300. That's the amount she can do. Write an inequality to represent that statement. Use n for the number of texts. Well, if we're doing at most 300, that's the most she can make, we would do n is less than or equal to 300 because she cannot go over it. Now what E wants us to do is write the statements from part B and part D as a compound inequality. Compound inequality means both of them together into one sentence or one statement. So let's use the two together. We have n is greater than or equal to 0, and we have n is less than or equal to 300. That would be a compound inequality because it's joined by the word and. Write the compound inequality in compact form. You can only write compound inequalities that use the word and in compact form. And what compact form means is together into one sentence. So starting with our least amount, which is 0, and our greatest amount, 300, we're going to put in the middle of it. And I just have to write the appropriate signs right here. Well, we know that this is our least amount that we're going to be able to write. So 0 is less than or equal to n, which is less than or equal to 300. And how was I able to get these? Well, I know that 0 is the least amount, 300 is the maximum or the greatest amount, and all of the numbers in between I'm allowed to be. That's why we have those less than or equal to signs. Graph the inequality. Describe your number line representation. So if we're going to graph the inequality, we're going to go from 0 to 300. So I'm going to put a little tick mark here, 0, 100, 200, and then 300. And since we are allowed to be 0 and 300, they get closed circles because I'm allowed to be that amount. And then we're in between 0 and 300. Notice here we're 0 less than n less than 300. So all of these numbers in between here, which represent this area, are going to be shaded in. So we're going to need to go over the number line. And it says describe your representation. And it says the graph is represented by closed circles on both 0 and 300 because both can be part of the solution. Also, all the numbers between 0 and 300 are part of the solution. So this graph of the inequality represents all possible numbers that could be part of the solution. Number 2, Tanisha's family's new cell phone plan costs $55 per month, plus 20 cents for each text with a maximum of 300 texts per month. So we're starting off, the bill starts off at $55. And then with every text she makes, it's going to be another 20 cents. So let's figure out which one of these is our rate of change and which one is our y-intercept. So we have a starting amount of 55 and every text she sends is 20 cents. So this would be our y-intercept because that's our starting amount. If we did 0 texts, then we would spend $55. So that 0 represents the y-intercept. And the 55 would be where it crosses the y-axis. The 20 cents for each text with a maximum of 300 texts, this right here represents every time she texts, it's going to be another 20 cents, which is why that is our rate of change. Let T represent the number of texts made during a month. Write an expression to represent the total monthly cost of the plan. So our expression is starting off at $55 and then plus 20 cents for every text. So 20 cents for each text, and that's multiplication, which is why we just write the T next to it. Remember, I always try to tell you guys that rate of change is the one that's always going to be connected to the variable. Determine the minimum cost per month by using the least number of texts. Remember, on the previous page, we talked about the least number of text being 0. So if we're going to say what's the minimum cost per month if she does 0 texts, well, that would just be plugging in 0 for T. So that would be $55 plus 20 cents, and instead of T, I'm actually going to use 0. And here we have 20 cents times 0, which just cancels that whole entire part out, and I would be left with $55. So it would cost $55 a month if she didn't send any texts whatsoever. Write an inequality to represent the statement, use C for the monthly cost. So we need to use an inequality. If this is our least amount, because this is the least number of texts, then I know my cost is going to be greater than or equal to $55 because this is the smallest it's going to be. So our cost per month is going to be greater than $55, but it could be equal to it, so we've got to put that or equal to sign. And then carrying on down, determine the maximum cost per month. So maximum cost per month by using the greatest number of texts. Well, what was the greatest number of texts? That was 300. So what is the maximum cost? Because that's all she can do. The greatest number is 300. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug 300 in to that T spot instead of 0. So 55 plus 20 cents. And instead of 0, this time we're going to put 300. And when I do the math, I'm going to multiply these two numbers together. 20 cents times 300. I'm going to get 55 plus 60, and when I add those two together, I get 115. This represents the maximum cost of the plan is $115. So $55 is the minimum cost of the plan, $115 is the maximum cost of the plan. So this next part says, write an inequality to represent the statement above. Use C for the monthly cost. Well, this is the greatest number of texts, so this is the most she is ever going to spend. She's not going to spend over this amount. So then we would write C is less than or equal to $115. Why the or equal to? Because it can be 115, but it can't go over it, which is why we use the less than sign. Write the compound inequality that represents the cost of the plan. So this is our minimum, and this is our maximum, and we're using the letter C in the middle there. So we're going to go ahead and write it out. We have C is greater than or equal to 55. That was our least amount. And C is less than or equal to 115 because that was the greatest amount. Now what they want you to do is write the compound inequality in compact form. So since they have the word and there, I'm going to combine this into one statement. If the word or was there, you would not be able to combine it into compact form. Only inequalities that have only compound inequalities that have the word and can be written in compact form. So start with your least number, just like we would on the number line. So 55 is our least. The greatest cost is 115, and I know that C is going to be less than or equal to 115, but it's going to be greater than or equal 55 because this is the least amount and this is the greatest amount. So go ahead and graph the inequality and describe your number line representation. So let's go ahead and put 55, 65, 75, 85, 95, this is 85, 105, 115. So we have those two. Since we're allowed to be 55, that was the smallest amount, we're going to do a closed circle. And we're allowed to be 115, so we're going to do a closed circle. And then all of the values in between those are included with our less than or equal to signs. So here I'm going to shade all in this spot. And then it says describe your number line representation. The graph is represented by closed circles on both 55 and 115 because both of those amounts can be part of the solution. Also, all the amounts between 55 and 115 are part of the solution. John owns a 50-acre apple orchard. Among his many concerns during the growing season is the amount of rainfall. Unfavorable conditions such as drought, which means no rain, and flooding, which means massive amounts of rains, will affect tree production. John does not want rainfall amounts to be less than 10 inches or more than 50 inches. So less than 10 inches would represent a drought. More than 50 inches would represent a flooding, and that could be bad too for the trees. Represent the undesirable rainfall amounts on the number line. So we need to be less than 10 or more than 50. So let's go ahead and put those numbers on the number line. We've got 10, or let's just do 0 here, and then 10, and 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So 20, 30, 40, 50, and then 60. So our spots where we're going to be putting dots are 10 and 50. We have to think about, is it an open circle, which means that number is not included, or is it a closed circle, which means this number is included? He specifically says less than 10, which means on that number line, I need to put a big old open circle because he does not want 10 to be included. It's okay if he gets 10, but if he gets less than 10, he's in a drought. So less than would represent the numbers to the left. So I would shade in that direction. And then the next one talks about more than 50. So ask yourself, is 50 inches okay? Yes, it's okay. We're okay to be 50 inches, but we have to be more than would represent flooding. So 50 inches would not be included because that's not flooding just yet. 51 inches would be considered flooding, so that's why we shade in the greater than direction. Write a compound inequality to represent the same information and define your variable. So we're going to let R represent total rainfall. So R is going to be total rainfall. And then we need to represent it with two inequalities because we first have the drought situation and then we have the flooding situation. So R less than 10 or R greater than 50. Why do I have to use the word or there? Well, think about it. You can't have a drought and a flooding situation occur in one season. Either it's going to be a drought, or it's going to be flooding, or it's going to be perfect, which is represented by 10 through 50. That would be a perfect growing season. Down here is a drought, or up here is flooding. So that's why we have to use the word or. At John's apple orchard, the profit he will make depends on the number of bushels he grows and sells. He makes $25 per bushel. Right there, you should know right away that's going to be my rate of change. Because what is he selling? He's selling bushels. And how much are they? They are $25 per bushel. But he must subtract $300,000 for costs associated with growing the trees in order to calculate his profit. So it costs him $300,000 just to have a 50-acre apple orchard. But he does make a profit of $25 per bushel. So it says, write an expression to represent the profit John will make. Let B represent the number of bushels he will produce and sell. Well, we know $25 is my rate of change, so he's going to be attached to the variable B. So 25B. However, he starts off in the hole because it costs him $300,000. So we first have to make $300,000 just to break even, and then anything over that will be a profit. So we have to do subtraction because it's costing him $300,000 a year just to run it. Now part B says John must make at least $80,000, which means this is the bare minimum. He's got to make $80,000 just to pay the bills. But he does not want to make more than $250,000. Now you might be asking, why do you not want to make more than? Well, there's this whole thing called tax brackets. If you're in a higher tax bracket, then you're going to be taxed more. So if he can make up to $250,000, then he will be okay because he'll be in the lower tax bracket. Write a compound inequality that represents the amount of profit John can make. So let's first deal with the $80,000. So our profit is 25B minus $300,000. And then we need to do at least $80,000, which means or equal to, because $80,000 would be okay. But if I did anything more than that, that would be awesome. So we have 80,000. And anything more than that would be better. So that's why we're doing the greater than or equal to sign. And then we don't want to make over $250,000. We want to make less than. $250,000 is okay, but we want to make less than that. So there's our two inequalities that represent this problem situation. Sorry, one more zero. Okay, now what we were doing before is we can make these into a compound, Okay, now think about this. This is the least amount he can make, and this is the greatest amount he wants to make. So this expression falls in between these two amounts, which means I can take these two amounts and write it as a compact inequality. So 80,000 represents the least he can make, is less than or equal to 25B minus 300,000, which the most he wants to make is 250,000. 250,000 is okay, but anything more than that would put him into a higher tax bracket. So then the very next one wants us to solve the compound inequality. And I'm going to show you how you can solve this compact inequality in only 2 steps. Where if we did this one over here, we would have to solve this one separately and then solve this one. So let me show you how to solve this all in just 2 steps. Okay. First and foremost, let's look at 25B. We need to get this B by itself. So 25 is going to be the last man standing because he's standing right next to B. So we need to first move this negative 300,000. So if I move a negative 300,000, that's not going to cancel this number out. So what would be canceling this number out? By adding 300,000 to all 3 sides. So we're adding it to this side. We need to add it to this side, and we need to add it to this side. All 3 sides gets the change in the inequality. And when I do that, I get 380,000 on my left side, less than or equal to, well now these are removed, so I just have 25B, less than or equal to, and then here this would be 550,000. So what's the last thing I need to do to this inequality to get B by itself? Divide all parts by 25. So I need to go in, I divide this part by 25, which means I need to divide this side by 25 and this side by 25. Now since I did not divide by a negative, I do not flip those signs. I'm going to go through and that cancels out, which is the whole point, that goes to 1. 380,000 divided by 25 is 15,200. Less than or equal to B, less than or equal to 22,000. So what does this represent right here? This left side represents the least amount of bushels he can sell to earn $80,000. This represents the maximum amount of bushels he could sell to earn up to $250,000 and including 250. So if he sells 15,200 bushels, he would make $80,000 a year. If he sold 22,000 bushels, then he would make $250,000 a year, and that would be a good year. All right, looking further down. It says graph the solution to the compound inequality. So here on this side, we're going to have our least amount, 15,200 bushels. Over here, we're going to have our greatest amount, 22,000 bushels. And since we're allowed to be it's less than or equal to, I'm going to put a closed dot on 15,200 and 22,000, and we're allowed to be all the numbers in between. So since we're going to be all the numbers in between, I'm going to shade all in between here. And that would be this spot right here. So it says describe the solution region in terms of the problem situation. John should sell between 15,200 and 22,000 bushels of apples to make a profit between 80,000 and 250,000. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope that helped you with lesson 2-4.